Welcome to the Practical Growth Podcast. I'm your host, E.B. Johnson, top writer on Medium.com, published author, and master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. You've landed on the podcast that takes you on a journey into the heart of relationships and self-discovery. This is a must listen for those who are ready to overcome their toxic relationships and their toxic patterns. You can expect real talk, practical guidance, and raw and relatable guests that you'll be talking about for weeks. Let's get into it. Oh, do I have an episode for you. We are uncovering more secrets of the narcissist today, but more importantly, one of the biggest secrets of the narcissistic family. If you're someone who's been following me for a long time, then you know that I've written a lot about narcissistic family, and I have my own experiences with narcissistic family. That's why I enjoy speaking so much about the narcissist and uncovering their dirty little secrets to expose them so you can understand them, so you can avoid them, so you can heal from them, right? That's my sweet spot. I'm the mirror that the narcissist can't hate, and I am the reference guide that will help you get through that toxic narcissist attachment. And that's what today's episode is about. We are going to be talking about the narcissistic family, and more specifically, enmeshment, which is the tool that narcissistic, toxic, abusive types of families use to hide that abuse, to keep their secrets hidden, and to, more importantly, control the members of the family unit. Just before we get started, though, I'm very excited to let you know that applications are now open for the January and February sessions of my 8-week private coaching program. This is the best way to set yourself up for mental and emotional success in 2022. If you are someone who is recovering from narcissistic abuse, or you're someone who's just trying to build healthier relationships with yourself and with others, or maybe you're just someone who wants to increase your emotional awareness and your emotional regulation, this program is for you. This is not standard life coaching, okay? This is neuro-linguistic programming, of which I am a certified master practitioner. So this is a very serious program, and it's only for people who are serious about making changes in their life. Spots are limited. So if you are ready to stop BSing yourself and you're ready to really turn things around in 2022, then you need to head to therealebjohnson.com and apply for one of these spots. You better hurry. They will go quickly. Right. Tough stuff over. Let's get into it. Enmeshment, toxic families. What are we talking about? Families should be close, right? Yes, but a toxic family takes that closeness and weaponizes it. They turn it into something that is all about control, power, and domination. And that is what enmeshment is really about. You see, the enmeshed family is overly close. Enmeshment is all about not having boundaries. There's no such thing as having personal space, having personal autonomy. There's no freedom. There's no choices. There's no real support. Not in the enmeshed family. The primary difference between a very close family and an enmeshed family is the distinct lack of boundaries. And that's why you see enmeshment so much in these toxic and abusive families, okay? That is because in the enmeshed family, you cannot be yourself. You have to conform yourself to the identity of whatever person or power structure has been put into place. In the close family, it's okay to have your personal identity. You're still supported, you're still loved, you're still welcomed with open arms. But enmeshment does not include that. Enmeshment is something far more insidious. Think about that kid in high school that had the super strict family. If you're from the South, it's probably not too hard. You would have that kid who would come to school and they would talk about their parents took the doors off the hinges and they have to go to church every Sunday and then the family night every Friday night and then the family trip every Saturday and then every night is a certain thing and a certain this and a certain that. And they're attached to their families, but not only they're attached to their families, they're conformed to these families, right? You may have known this kid to be a bit fun, wild, out there, but then when you saw them around their family, they were very conformed. They may have had to dress a certain way, act a certain way, perform to a certain extent in a certain way. Enmeshment demands conformity, and that's why you see it so often in the narcissistic family. And this is also how they are able to conceal their abuse, because by using this tool of enmeshment, they are able to project the facade of this really close Leave It to Beaver family. Oh, look, I spend all weekend with my children. Oh, look how cleanly dressed and well behaved my children are all the time. But really, beneath the surface, behind closed doors, there's complete tension, there's anxiety, there's people walking on eggshells, there's people being punished if they stray outside of that, again, groupthink power structure that's been set up for them. These families are marked by their low emotional awareness. There's a lot of emotional volatility going on. There's a lot of resentment. And even though there's a lack of boundaries, even though thoughts are violated, personal space is violated, there's still so much secret keeping beneath the surface, because no one really feels emotionally safe with anyone else in the enmeshed family. This is a theme that I really saw quite commonly throughout my own childhood. And, because there was a lot of splintering and kind of friction in my family, it didn't necessarily extend to me at all times, although the enmeshment was always there because of the narcissist element in my family. But you would see it in other parts of the family. You would see very, very strict interactions with children and forceful demands for children to behave a certain way, look a certain way, live their lives in a certain way, pressure that those children felt conformed to adhere to at all times, whether that was out of fear or for a desire to love, okay? This is enmeshment. But from the outside to the untrained eye, it might look like a strict family, but they care. They care so much. They want so much for their children to do well and to be this great loving family that they're holding their children to a higher standard. But what's really happening behind those closed doors again is that the narcissists, the abusers, the toxic structure elements in that family are actually demanding rigid perfection, and they're forming these false projections out of ego, out of pride, out of desire to appear a certain way that they think is expected or demanded of them in the public eye. Not all enmeshed families look the same, however. This enmeshment can be projected in a lot of different ways, and even within that family, on the inside of things, it can look and feel much, much differently, which is what can, make it hard. Many of us who grew up in an enmeshed family, we don't realize it until years and years and years later, maybe after parents are gone or siblings or whatever, that, wow, we weren't close, we had no boundaries. And that is not healthy. That's your family is where you're supposed to learn your boundaries. And in the enmeshed family, you can't learn boundaries. So then what can we look out for? What are some signs that we might have come from an enmeshed family, or that we might have a friend or our spouse or someone close to us might be dealing with an enmeshed family? One that often escapes notice is a sense of family honor. It's this idea that family honor comes first. The children in the family will be raised under this very intense idea that their worthiness is based on their performance and their projection in the world. So their parents might demand that they get straight A's. They have to be perfect. They have to be the top of their class. They have to be the captain of whatever sport, varsity sport that they're on. It's all about performing for love. And that carries on into your adulthood, and it creates, as we'll discuss shortly, some really toxic and disruptive and dysfunctional behaviors. There's also a distinct lack of privacy in the enmeshed family. Close families still allow the members of that family to have their privacy, okay? You can go to your room, close the door, talk on the phone to your friend. You can have your journals. You can be your own person with your own private thoughts, and to, a reasonable extent, come and go and live your life as an autonomous individual. Not in the enmeshed family, okay? There are no personal boundaries, especially not if those boundaries are going to form a threat to the powers that be. So say you have a child who maybe pursues more of a counterculture lifestyle, and if they have a very conservative parent, that can be a threat to the power structure. So then boundaries can't happen, right? Because if that kid is allowed to set boundaries, They will dress a certain way, have certain relationships, they will pursue a certain lifestyle. And that's not something that their conservative, toxic, abusive, in this instance, parent could allow. So boundaries can't happen. That child's not allowed to have certain relationships. They're not allowed to speak up for themselves. They're not allowed to pick what they wear, what they listen to. And that, again, spirals into some really heinous beliefs and behaviors as an adult. Now, the third kind of big sign that we can look out for when it comes to these enmeshed families, and we've touched on this briefly, is a lack of personal autonomy. And this is especially when it comes to thought, okay, when it comes to emotions. In the enmeshed family, you can't have personal opinions in any realm. You're not making decisions on your own. You are doing, choosing, going the way of whatever the power structure says you are doing. And you are doing this because if you don't, you will be punished. And that punishment might be literal physical abuse. It might be mental and emotional abuse. And it might be complete rejection and abandonment from the family unit. That's a very real thing. There's people that live in that reality, right? They so much as look at a parent wrong, they're out of the house. They're homeless. So this is a common trait in the enmeshed family. There is no personal autonomy. You're not becoming your own person. You're not pursuing your own experiences and your own unique thoughts in the world. A very subtle sign of enmeshment, which is sometimes gets overlooked because, as I said, these can all manifest differently, is children performing as caretakers. That's right. It's not always that kind of domineering, authoritarian, nasty, controlling environment that we've kind of envisioned or been conditioned to imagine when it comes to the toxic family. Imagine, if you will, someone who has a parent who's a covert narcissist, right? They may not necessarily be getting that overt emotional and mental torture, but they might have a parent to whom they have to cater to emotionally, right? A parent who's always in grief, who's always in despair, who's always in crisis. And the child always has to cater to how they feel. They always have to chase mommy, chase daddy, make sure she feels better, calm her down, make sure daddy doesn't yell, make sure daddy's not upset, right? And a lot of us know how that turns out. That turns out later on in our relationships when we do the same things with our partners. We cater to them emotionally and we bury everything that we feel and everything that we need inside. So don't get it twisted. It's not always about that domineering parent who's breathing down their child's neck. Sometimes the manipulation happens far more subtly than that. There is, however, always some kind of power and submission structure, right? Even if it doesn't matter if the parents are like overtly domineering and authoritarian, or if you're having more toxic, subtle, manipulative things with someone who's very like mentally and emotionally ill, they might have addiction issues, whatever it is. Either way, there is this demand for submission. You need to cater to the person who is on top. Usually there's one parent, but sometimes there's two, like a narcissist and an enabler. But you have to adhere to what their demands are. And if you do not play their game, if you do not give them what you want, then you are punished. And most commonly, this punishment is rejection. They will withdraw love, withdraw affection. They might even kick the kid out of the home. That is a common thing that happens. So this power and submission dance, this demand that those who are deemed beneath, which typically is the children, submit to the person on top, very, very common in the enmeshed family. That is how they maintain control, and that is how they are able to project this totally fake facade while behind closed doors, they do whatever they want and they terrorize their families. Groupthink we've touched upon briefly, especially as it concerns to personal autonomy, and it's pretty straightforward. In the enmeshed family, you're not thinking on your own. You're not allowed to have your own political beliefs. You're not allowed to have your own beliefs as far as relationships, what they should look like, what your partner should look like. It is groupthink. Whoever is in charge decides what everyone in the family unit is thinking and how they're going to behave when it comes to the outside world. And that's it. There's no conversation about it. There's no compromise. So if this is something you experience, then it could be that you came from an enmeshed family. Shame and rejection, also common standard in the enmeshed family. That's one of the primary ways they're able to keep that control and keep the manipulations and all this toxic power struggles going on, is this shame, this, everyone has to walk on eggshells. Everyone has to subject themselves. If they do not, always hanging above them is the threat of rejection. I experienced this in my own family. There were certain elements in this family that if you were living under their roof or really close with them, they demanded things be a certain way. When they came home, the house had to look a certain way. Food had to be done. There was a lot going on. And all of these things were crazy, right? People would run around, scurry, turn themselves inside out to do everything that these family members wanted. And it was always because if they didn't, they knew, they didn't have to be told. They knew that there was going to be rejection, right? There was going to be screaming. There was going to be name calling. There was going to be all kinds of wackiness, which was just going to make them feel awful and ruin their life for days and days and days and days and days. So shame and rejection, it's so powerful. You don't have to hit your family members to control them. And the enmeshed family, this toxic family structure, it knows that well, and it uses this shame and this idea that if you do not adhere, you will be rejected. We will kick you out. We will not love you anymore. You are disposable. That enables a lot of horrible things. This final sign that you should look for in enmeshed family structures is a big one, and it's one that I really, really want you to think about. One of the biggest and most common features of the enmeshed family is secret keeping. Secret keeping. And if you are someone who grew up in an old school family, then you know the secret keeping all too well. Don't say that. Don't tell anyone about that. Don't tell your friends about that. Bad things happen. There's fights, there's yelling, there's screaming. We have dark moments in our families, and then instead of addressing them, instead of facing the consequences, the power structures in these families often rush, right, to cover up the secrets. You can't say that, because if you say that, this illusion of our perfect family will be ruined. They'll come and take you away. Our family will be shattered. You won't be here anymore. We won't love you anymore. Secret keeping, all of this terror and fear and doubt, manipulation, it all boils down to keeping these secrets, making sure that these behaviors are never brought to light, that the truth is never addressed, that the people who are wronged never get their justice, that the people doing the wrongs never have to face the light. Enmeshed families demand this. They project the image of this Leave It to Beaver perfect. Oh, we love each other. We go to church every Sunday. Look at us. We've got the 2.5 kids, the picket fence. They project this. And then when everyone turns away, it's a completely different story. Conflict, fights, resentment, fear, walking on eggshells, abuse. It's all going on. It's all going on. But this toxic family is so intertwined. There's no boundaries. There's no ability to say no. No one's ever taught how to stand up for themselves. They're never allowed to stand up for themselves. And so you just end up with an absolute disaster and adult children who spiral. And that's a big, big, big thing I want to hit on this episode. It's a very important thing that I think we all need to understand, and it's especially important for those who are in the stages of healing and recovering from narcissistic abuse or family abuse, all of these things. Growing up in an enmeshed family is no small thing. It does serious, serious damage, not only to your self-esteem and your general mental health, but your ability to form healthy, stable, fulfilling relationships throughout your adulthood. You'll struggle to form relationships with partners. You'll struggle to form relationships that are stable and fulfilling with your own children. Okay, that's how serious this kind of growing up enmeshed can be, because you never learn how to set boundaries. You never learn how to say no, how to speak up for yourself, how to address your emotions, how to even acknowledge the wide array of emotions that you have. Adult children of enmeshed families grow up to have savior complexes. If you were someone who had to constantly cater to the emotional needs of a parent, or you had just like a complete deadbeat waster of a parent that you were always trying to clean up, pick up, encourage, be the emotional crutch for, it can create this idea that you have to rescue everyone else in your life. So you start to pick relationships in which you have to fix the person and you have to save them from themselves and some horrible, crisis or addiction that they have, or you have to save them from this horrible situation in life that they have. When you are raised in an enmeshed family, you learn to be responsible for the adults. You're constantly trying to make sure that you fit into whatever box you need in order to keep them on an even keel and not upset in some way. And that plays out in your adult relationships by creating savior complexes. Insecurity and low self-esteem also come standard. The person who was raised in these enmeshed families, they can't make decisions for themselves, because they were never taught how to. They were never allowed to. And then all of a sudden, when that cord is cut in whatever way and they end up with partners or out in the world by themselves, they're constantly looking to their partner like, well, what do I do? They don't know what to do because they were never allowed to make decisions. That's a skill. Making choices for yourself, breaking down these decisions, that's a skill that you have to be taught. But you're not allowed to do that in the enmeshed family. Your decisions are whatever that top honcho says, and that's it. And so that's why when you're an adult and you've grown up in this system, you can be totally insecure about yourself, your ability to choose correctly, your ability to do the right thing, all of the above. And as we know, that's horrifically damaging to your long-term opportunities and happiness. You can also experience a serious loss of perspective. You never really learn how to see yourself for yourself. You're constantly seeing yourself through the reflection of whoever's in charge, right? Which is usually like a narcissist or an abuser who think you're trash. So you learn to see yourself as trash. So there's a real loss of perspective of what the world is, what it could be, and what your total potential could be. But most importantly, one of the biggest side effects when you're an adult child of an enmeshed family is codependency. Because you learn to be responsible for someone else's emotional states and for their well-being, you can play that out in your adult relationships, right? You might end up with a partner to whom you're constantly playing mommy or daddy to. You end up in these like parent-child relationships. On the flip side, you might end up totally dependent on someone else. You may just be like totally helpless, not able to function in the world, not able to make decisions for yourself, no confidence, no ability or skill to go out and actually function in the world, which is a very brutal place. And that is standard. You lose so many skills. Your skills are taken from you. Your just executive function, your basic skills are taken from you when you grow up in these enmeshed families in which you are expected to basically just be a robot. Fine, Evie, I get it. That's probably what you're saying at this point in the episode. I get it. We get it. Enmeshed families, no boundaries. What do I do about it? Well, you know me, especially if you've been following my writing on medium.com for a long time. I don't like to leave you without actionable steps that you can take away and at least try to make the smallest improvement to your situation. And I mean, smallest improvement. It might even just be like being able to get through a single day, right? When you're dealing with the ups and downs coming off the back end of this kind of family structure, this family life, this family relationship. So I'm going to break it down for you. I'm going to give you 5 quick tips that you can use to try to boost your recovery if you're on the back of one of these narcissistic, toxic, enmeshed family structures. So this is the point. Get out your pen and paper. If you want some real tools that you can execute right here, right now to improve the way you feel about this is where you need to start. First off, give yourself a sense of internal control. You need to detach yourself emotionally from what your family was, and that means accepting it. Okay, you just need to accept it. You need to acknowledge it, and you need to cultivate an individual identity for yourself. You need to discover what is your real behavior. Who are you really? What do you really want? And that's across the board. How do you want to communicate? How are you most successful when you communicate? What do you want to say for yourself? How do you want to feel? What do you want your relationships to look like? What do you want your career? What do you want your life to look like? All of these things have to be uncovered because you never really were allowed to explore those things. So the first step is really digging into that self-exploration. Give yourself a sense of knowing who you are. And when you do that, you feel like you're more in control of who you are, and you can start mapping out a life for yourself. Number 2, you need to set some ironclad boundaries. Every relationship needs boundaries, and that includes the relationship with your family. And that's especially true if you're an adult who is still very close to your family. You got to draw the line, and that means drawing the line around what you expect from them in terms of communication, in terms of behavior, their reactions, the way they treat you, and vice versa. You got to set some boundaries for yourself. What are you not willing to put up with? What lines are you not going to allow them to cross? You're allowed to have boundaries. Your boundaries protect your well-being. Okay? It's like if you're a Lost fan, it's that big fence. It's that big sonic fence, and you have a right to flip that switch and turn that fence on around anything that is absolutely crucial to your needs and your well-being. So set those boundaries. And when you set those boundaries, communicate them. Be direct and be assertive. You are allowed to say, you will not say that to me. You will not treat me this way. You will not act like that around me. Okay? All of these things are part of your boundaries. And if you are still dealing with this enmeshed family, you got to set those boundaries, and you got to set them hard. Number 3, I want you to create more space for authenticity. You need to be more authentically yourself. And that first step, you took some time to deeply dig into who you are, what you really want. Well, now's the time to live it. Okay. This point is the action point. You've got to be yourself. You've created some boundaries and you've figured out who you are. Act on it. Start pursuing relationships that you actually want to be involved in, opportunities that you actually want to be a part of. Open the doors that you want to open and stop playing by the rules that your family has set down for you. You're not beholden to them. You're an adult. Okay? You get to do whatever you want to do, and you get to handle whatever consequences or successes or victories come on the other side of that. So act like it. Be authentic. Create space for yourself. If you're still living under your parents' roof, then get out once a week. You need to get out once a week. Have a night in which you can be yourself with people that you can be yourself with. And that has to be your starting place. Number 4, it is absolutely imperative that you build a chosen family for yourself. We have these old archaic notions of family, and that family is blood is thicker than water, and a lot of these come from, religious beliefs and from times in which, there was plague and things like that, in which you had to really, really, really stick together in order to survive. But we live in modern times. It's not necessary. You don't have to suffer mental and emotional abuse in order to survive anymore. It's absolutely not necessary. But what you can do is you can lean into the arms of people who align with you, people who choose you every day, just like you choose them every day. And what's more powerful, someone who chooses you or someone who feels like they have to show up for you and does the bare minimum? Chosen family is so powerful, and they exist out there. They exist. It doesn't matter how weird you think you are, how eccentric, how unique or one of a kind. There's a whole branch of people out there who are ready to welcome you with open arms, who want the best for you as much as they want it for themselves. People who will celebrate you, who will lift you up. And you have to find those people. And when you do, you will realize that you don't have to be so beholden to this toxic family structure anymore. You can be yourself. So find that chosen family that reflects who you truly are and who you truly want to be. Last but not least, you need to accept it. You got to accept it wholly. You've got to accept who your family are, who they aren't, who they never were, who they're never going to be. They were never that caring, close family. It doesn't matter what you saw projected. It doesn't matter what they told you your family was. You lived it. You know what the experience is, and you're living with the consequences of what they handed down to you right now. It is the state of the life that you're in, the quality of the choices that you make for yourself every single day. And you have to accept this truth. And when you accept who your family is and who they aren't, then you can be realistic about doing whatever needs to be done. And in some cases, that might be going no contact, or might just be creating more physical space, more emotional boundaries, right? It's different for everyone. And there's no right or wrong answer, but you absolutely have to take off those rose-tinted glasses and see your family for who they truly are. And from there, you can actually kick open that door and start living the life that you were always supposed to live. And that's it. That's how we're going to confront this enmeshment. That's how we're going to bounce back. That's how we're going to embrace healing. That is how we are going to set a new tone, pace, quality for our lives. Okay, enmeshment is horrible. Enmeshed families aren't close. They have no boundaries. And that's also how they hide their abuse. They project that closeness, but really, we know what it's about. It's about control and it's about manipulation. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope that this has been enlightening. I hope that it's helped, shed some truth on an issue that you've been experiencing, or it's just made you feel a bit lighter. It's made you feel acknowledged, because that's really all that it's about at the end of the day. It's making sure that you have the tools that you need to improve the quality of your life and your relationships from the inside out. As always, I hope this episode has found you well. If you are interested in private coaching, remember applications for my January and February sessions are open now. This is really great if you're someone who is coming off of the back end of narcissistic abuse and you're trying to recover and you're bouncing back, okay? So if you would like to apply for that or just find out more, make sure you visit therealebjohnson.com today. We will talk next week, but until then, stay true to yourselves and each other. Bye-bye.